somebody doesn't love our country, when they allow this to happen to our country, we have hundreds of thousands of people pouring in every 2 weeks, hundreds of thousands, and coming from countries we don't even know from where they're coming. And, you know, they're emptying out many countries. I used to say the three, Guatemala, you could add Mexico, Honduras, you could add El Salvador, but I used to say 3 or 4 countries. I hear it's 50 countries. They're emptying out their prisons into the United States. Their jails, some of the toughest people on earth are being dumped into the United States because they don't want them. They don't want to take care of them for the next 40 years. So these people that are the roughest prisoners there are anywhere are being dumped into the United States for us to take care of them. What are they doing? They're destroying our country.
Mr. President, you did urge the United States senators today not to do what they promised for 2 months they wouldn't do, but yet they threw a lifeline to Chuck Schumer. And by the way, Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, yep, they're mocking Mitch McConnell. They're making fun of the Republicans, and they're laughing at him because he just threw them a lifeline that they didn't have to throw them.
The Republican Senate needs new leadership. I've been saying it for a long time. Mitch is not the guy. He's not the right guy. He's not doing the job. He gave them a lifeline. It's more than a lifeline. He gave them so much time now to figure out what to do because they were in a real big bind. They wouldn't have been able to do anything. He had the weapon, and he was unable to use it, and it's a shame. It's a shame. These 11 people, I know them, some are wonderful, and some I don't agree with too often. You know, I'm not surprised to see some of the names, but I will tell you this, that was not a good thing that happened today. He made a big mistake.
Let me start. There's a lot going on in the country, and when you start with abandoning Americans in Afghanistan, and I want to get into all of these issues in detail, and then you look at the crisis at the border, you look at Joe Biden gave up the energy independence that you achieved for the first time in 75 years, and now he's begging OPEC. You look at inflation, you look at the cost of energy, you look at America's standing in the world, you look at the saber rattling of China. We got a lot of ground to cover. The first thing, though, that I really think needs to be discussed is it's now day 54, Americans abandoned behind enemy lines. It's been almost 40 days since Joe has even mentioned them. We have thousands of green card holders. We have unknown hundreds of Americans and their families abandoned. He said he wouldn't do it 13 days before he abandoned them. Then we have Afghan allies we abandoned. And then we have military equipment in the billions of dollars that we leave in the hands of terrorists. I never thought, Mr. President, in my lifetime that I'd ever see that happen. Is there anything we can do now?
Well, look, we have to get our country back. It's what happened in Afghanistan, in my opinion, Sean, is the single most embarrassing event to happen to our country, maybe in its history. The warriors that were killed, and I've spoken to the parents of many of them, and they're devastated. How did we take out the military before everything else? The military is gone, and we leave everybody else there. And remember this, $85 billion, the best military equipment. I bought it. I rebuilt the entire military. $85 billion, the best equipment, military equipment in the world, and now they're taking it apart. Russia, China, they've already got some. They're taking it apart. They're going to examine it, and they're going to build it themselves. They can never do what we have with the Black Hawk helicopters and all of the other things that we have. This is the most it looked like a total surrender, the most embarrassing moment. And then you look also at the border, and they see these pictures at the border of hundreds of thousands of people coming in every couple of weeks into our country. We have no idea who they are. And by the way, speaking of that, go back to Afghanistan, and you take a look at the people that came out of Afghanistan. Only 3% of them qualified to come out. They just rushed the airplanes, and they're plenty tough and plenty smart and a lot of energy, and those are the people that got onto the plane. 3%, the various planes, 3% of the people qualify, and it's incredible what's happening to our country. We're being laughed at all over the world. We're not respected anymore. We had a thing going. You take a look at Taiwan. That was not happening during the Trump administration with Taiwan, and they understood you can't do that. And what's going on is just a terrible thing for our country. I don't think we've ever been this disrespected.
You know, you were last time on this program, and I think we need to put emphasis back on this, that your conversation with the leader of the Taliban before you ever discussed any deal of withdrawal was, number one, it was based on your stated threat that you would obliterate them. Do you remember exactly what you said? Because I have a source that says you were brutal to them, and that you said you would destroy them, you would destroy their province, you would destroy it, and it would be everybody in the area would be dead. Did you say that?
So what I said, and I had a very strong conversation, I said, I hate to start the conversation this way, but that's the way it is. And I said we would do serious, serious harm to them if they killed any of our soldiers or any American citizen, and went on from there. And then we got back into a more normalized conversation. Well, from that conversation on, 18 months, I believe, is the amount of time. We didn't lose one soldier. We didn't have one soldier shot at. No American was killed. They understood exactly. And they also understood we were getting out, and they had conditions. They didn't fulfill those conditions, so we hit them hard, and we stayed longer, and we were getting ready to move. And I said, I want every bolt. I want every nail. I want every screw. I want those buildings, those beautiful canvas buildings that we build as hangars. I want the buildings taken out. I want the canvas. I want the airplanes. I want the tanks. I want every single piece of equipment we have. And then we were going to bomb 5 airfields, and we were going to keep Bagram because it's right next to China. In fact, it's right next to very close to their nuclear facility. It would have been great to keep it. It cost $10 billion to build it. And we left with the lights on. They left the lights on. They left the dogs there. They didn't destroy the equipment. They didn't take the equipment out. They said they destroyed some equipment because they were so embarrassed that they left without the equipment. $85 billion. Nobody knows what that is. $85 billion worth of equipment. The entire budget, military budget of Russia for a year is $50 billion. Wow. And we left $85 billion worth of equipment in the hands of the Taliban.
So you would obliterate them if they didn't follow every dotted I and crossed T. Okay. It was going to be a conditions-based withdrawal, only if conditions were suitable. You would keep in perpetuity Bagram Air Base, which we paid for and built. Can you explain to me when Joe Biden had the month of March, April, May, June, and July, when he had full control of Kabul, including the perimeter around Karzai International Airport, when the Taliban was way south of Kabul, why didn't he evacuate? If he wasn't going to obliterate them and push them back, why didn't he move everybody out when he had full control of Kabul and the airport and the perimeter? Why would he wait until the Taliban took over Kabul?
Nobody understands it, and the media is not covering it. It's already become like not only fake news, but old news. They're trying to get rid of it. You don't see them talking about that now. I read an article 2 days ago where they're selling the machine guns. They have 600,000 guns of different types, the most sophisticated weapons in the world. And they're selling these machine guns and guns on the black market. Other countries are buying them. They're selling them. They don't need that many. You don't need that many. 600 to 700,000 guns. They have night goggles that are better than anything we have. The latest model, brand new, out of the box, never used before. The latest model. All stuff that, they never liked very good fighters, but they never liked the Taliban fighting at night. Now they can fight at night. They can do what they want to do. They have the best. They have the Apache helicopters. They have the best equipment in the world, $85 billion. That wasn't the deal. And they understood. I spoke to Abdul, and Abdul understood. We're leaving, and we're taking our equipment, and we're taking our American citizens. If they wanted to stay, they had the right to stay, but they don't want to stay. And we were taking them. And the last out would have been when everything's gone. The last out would have been our military. The big mistake to take our military out first. And I could just see these people saying, Abdul, he is the leader. And now if you look, he's the leader still. I could just see them saying, Abdul, the American military has left. And him saying, there's no way. You've got to be crazy. And they go, no, they've left. And going in, and then they go to Kabul, and they'll find out that they left. These guys could not believe that they left. But that's what happened.
Let me move to the border, Mr. President. When you first ran, it became a big issue. You implemented what's known as the Stay in Mexico policy. That's been abolished. You built about 500 miles of new wall. We had the lowest rate of illegal immigrants coming into this country in nearly 40 years. You eliminated the catch and release program. The wall building has stopped. The Stay in Mexico program has ended, and it's no longer catch and release. It's process and release, and then hand them people a request form. We request that you may show up in court. You don't have to. We're not mandating, but we request it. I doubt people will honor that request. We're on path to have a record number of illegal immigrants, probably a 30-year high. We're closing in on 2 million illegal immigrants in the country. There's no vaccine mandates like are for American citizens. There's no COVID checks. There's a high rate of COVID positivity. There's no security or background checks if people have radical associations. It's all unfolding before our eye. You see the mess at the border. You saw the overcrowded cages. You had it under complete control. And now we see the Democrats are trying to slip in amnesty in this reconciliation bill. You know, at this point, I've got to believe that this is done on purpose. They're not enforcing the law. If you didn't enforce the law, they'd want to impeach you. It seems like they're aiding and abetting in law breaking. What are your thoughts on the border?
Well, I think you're right about that. And I will say that the border we had was the strongest probably ever. And all they had to do is leave it alone. You know, they sued us, the Democrats, Congress, for 2.5 years. We won all the suits for 2.5 years, and then we were able to start the wall. It would have been finished in literally a period of weeks. And now we're paying $6 million a week for contractors not to build the wall. Now, the wall was almost complete, and it's one of the things that led to this great record. And one thing you didn't say, Sean, is drugs. Drugs were at the lowest point, drugs coming in particular fentanyl, which is a brutal drug. It was stopped. It was at a level that we hadn't seen in a long time, low level. And now it's coming in at levels that we've never seen, 3, 4, 5 times more than we ever had coming in. It's pouring into our country. There's something wrong. You wouldn't believe you could even say this, but somebody doesn't love our country. When they allow this to happen to our country, we have hundreds of thousands of people pouring in every 2 weeks, hundreds of thousands, and coming from countries we don't even know from where they're coming. And, you know, they're emptying out many countries. I used to say the three, Guatemala, you could add Mexico, Honduras, you could add El Salvador, but I used to say 3 or 4 countries. I hear it's 50 countries. They're emptying out their prisons into the United States. Their jails, some of the toughest people on earth are being dumped into the United States because they don't want them. They don't want to take care of them for the next 40 years. So these people that are the roughest prisoners there are anywhere are being dumped into the United States for us to take care of them. What are they doing? They're destroying our country.
Well, that's now a big part of the spending bill. I guess this is the difference between America First policies and American Last policies. You know, when you were out and you were pushing to get the money and fighting to get the money, which you eventually found a way to build the 500 miles of wall that you built, you talked about a big wall, with a beautiful wall, you used to say, with a big door in it. Now, I'm for legal immigration. All 4 of my grandparents came from Ireland. I think you know my family story. And, you know, they had no money in their pocket. They were broke, and my parents grew up very poor. So I'm pro-immigration. Is it wrong to ask for a security check to make sure you don't have radical associations in the middle of a pandemic? Should we not give preferential treatment to people that don't respect our law Should they at least have a COVID test, a health check? Is it wrong to say that if we're going to invite you into our country, we don't care where you come from, but you got to be able to provide for yourself and you won't be a financial burden on the American people? That seems like pretty fair conditions. Would you support that?
Well, you have to support that, and for everybody else, they have to go through it. But if they just happen to walk in, they don't have to do any of the things that were supposed to be done. And you know, there's one other thing that nobody talks about. So we have hundreds of thousands of people flowing in from Haiti. Haiti has a tremendous AIDS problem. AIDS is a step beyond. AIDS is a real bad problem. So hundreds of thousands of people are coming into our country. And if you look at the stats, if you look at the numbers, if you look at, just take a look at what's happening in Haiti, a tremendous problem with AIDS. Many of those people will probably have AIDS, and they're coming into our country, and we don't do anything about it. We let everybody come in. Sean, it's like a death wish. It's like a death wish for our country.
Well, obviously, it seems that the Democrats, it's a top priority for them because they want to offer, you know, it's very interesting. I pointed out that so many countries actually sell citizenship. You can buy, if you want to spend $2.5 million, you can buy citizenship into places like Cyprus. You can buy citizenship. I believe Turkey sells it for $1 million or $2 million. Australia and New Zealand have conditions, but also you pay out millions of dollars. Then Antigua and St. Kitts and Nevis, it's something of great value. And I believe in, again, legal immigration. But let me move on to another issue, and that is, you know, for the first time in 75 years, you were able to achieve something that I have believed in for many, many years. And Newt Gingrich and I had started a campaign, drill here, drill now, pay less. And you finally got America to the point where we were energy independent. We didn't have to rely on countries that hate our guts for what is the lifeblood of the world's economy. We didn't have to worry so much about the Straits of Hormuz and the crazy mullahs in Iran. You didn't import a single barrel of oil, I believe, from Saudi Arabia in your last however many months in office. We were energy independent and a net exporter of energy. Now, Joe Biden has given that up, but worse, he's begging OPEC to increase their production. I want your overall thoughts, because we're now paying $1.50 more on average a gallon, over $5 a gallon in some places in California.
We became energy independent for the first time in the history of our country. One of the things I was most proud of, we had ANWR in Alaska. Ronald Reagan tried. Everybody tried to get it approved. They couldn't get it approved for many, many years. Ronald Reagan couldn't do it. He wanted to do it many years ago in Alaska. And Senator Murkowski made it possible that it was just ended by Biden, and that was done by a Republican senator, made it possible that ANWR, perhaps the biggest drilling site in the world, as big as Saudi Arabia. One of the other things that I was very proud of, we became #1 in the world in energy and oil and output. We were beating Saudi Arabia by a lot. We were beating Russia by a lot. We were bigger than both, and now we're going back to them. We're going back to OPEC for the first time in a long time. We're going back to OPEC because we don't have enough energy. We don't have enough oil and gas, because a lot of the areas that we're talking about were shut down, stupidly shut down for no reason, not even an environmental reason. They were just shut down. And it's very sad. We were energy independent just a few months ago, but we were going to be much bigger than both Russia and Saudi Arabia. We were already quite a bit bigger. And that took place on my watch, and I was very proud of it. Think of it, energy independence. We didn't have to go through the Straits. We didn't have to go to the Middle East. We didn't need anybody. We had the best energy in the world. We had the best companies doing it. And that ended about 2 months ago when we started going to OPEC because we don't have enough oil.
Let me ask you about this question. Why would Joe Biden give a waiver to Vladimir Putin to build the pipeline so he could provide natural gas to our Western European allies while simultaneously ending career jobs and energy independence on the Keystone XL pipeline, canceling ANWR, which you had finally opened up? Why would he do that? And when you look at that, do you then think, well, are maybe the Bidens compromised by Vladimir Putin? I'll give you another example. You see the saber rattling. You see all these jets of the communist Chinese flying over Taiwan. They're talking about reunification with Taiwan. I haven't really heard much from Joe Biden about what the communist Chinese are doing, clearly showing ambitions to take over Taiwan. And what do they have in common? Billion-dollar deal with the Bank of China, no experience that I can see. He got a $100,000 shopping spree from a Chinese national. And in Russia, Hunter Biden got a $3.5 million deal with a Russian oligarch, the former First Lady of Moscow. Now, if it was the last name was Trump, do you think that if you gave a waiver to Putin and you allowed the saber rattling of China over Taiwan and didn't do anything about it, and your sons made millions of dollars and did billion-dollar deals, don't you think the media in this country would accuse you of being compromised by China and Russia?
The media, the prosecutors, the Democratic radical left prosecutors that are all over the place would be all over us. It is incredible what's taken place. During the debate, I was not happy with Chris Wallace because he protected Joe. During the debate, I said, why is it that the mayor of Moscow's wife gave $3.5 million to the family? And Chris Wallace wouldn't let him answer the question. He said, well, that's not pertinent. I said, I think it's pertinent. But, it was a question we asked. Look, as far as Taiwan is concerned, we had an understanding, President Xi and I. We talked long and hard and pretty tough talk. They never did a thing on Taiwan. All of a sudden, they're flying 35, 40 bombers at a time over Taiwan. And they have their eyes on Taiwan. They never did that with me. We never had any problem with Taiwan. It was not a subject in the news. People thought someday it might be, but it was not during my watch. And President Xi understood that. We had a very good relationship until the China virus flowed in. Once that came in, it did a big number on the relationship. By the way, Sean, very importantly, hundreds of billions of dollars from China came into the United States that I instituted between taxes and tariffs and other things. And we gave $28 billion to our farmers because they didn't treat our farmers right. You know that. I gave $28 billion, and we had hundreds of billions of dollars left over that went into our treasury. We never took in 10 cents until I came along, 10 cents from China.
Well, nobody would ever ask them. I mean, that was a point that you made often. But we now have Chinese warplanes have now violated Taiwan airspace over 149 times in the past week. President Xi is talking about reunification, and he is threatening the United States, our military installations, Japan's military installations, and they're talking about reunification. If you were president, how would you handle that threat?
Well, I did handle the threat for 4 years because there was no threat. And he and I understood you couldn't do it. That was not going to be allowed. And we had a very tough talk, and I'm not going to reveal the talk. We had a very tough talk together at Mar-a-Lago when he was here, right at the beginning. The relationship was really an extraordinary one until COVID, but it was an extraordinary relationship that we had. And I had a great relationship with many of the leaders, but they weren't ripping our country off. Every country rips off the United States. I couldn't believe it. There wasn't a good deal that we had all over the world. That's why we have trillions and trillions of dollars of deficits. But we were changing all of that, making incredible deals. You mentioned the pipeline. I got the pipeline from Russia to Europe shut down. And then Biden came in. One of the first things he did is he opened up that pipeline. But he shut down our pipeline, which is the Keystone XL pipeline, one of the biggest in the world. He shut that down, and he allowed the biggest probably in the world from Russia into Europe, and Germany in particular. It's you can only ask him why. I can't tell you why. Doesn't make sense. But you can only ask him why.
Well, I think the fact that maybe Hunter made all this money, we just saw that the Libyans had a pretty good read on Hunter Biden. They knew about his drug addiction. They knew about his use of prostitutes. they had the book on him. Now, I would imagine that China, that did the $1.5 billion deal, and Russia, where he got $3.5 million, I would imagine their spy agencies, if Libya had it, they probably have a pretty good read on Hunter Biden and probably have compromising materials, to use the words that Adam Schiff made famous, on the Bidens. Is that a stretch on my part to suspect that what they know about Hunter could, in fact, impact Joe Biden?
Well, it's not really my position to say. As you know, they have investigations going on, but those investigations are not going nowhere. They only investigate Republicans, frankly. Those investigations are going absolutely nowhere. I wouldn't think you're going to wake up anytime soon and say, look what they found. But there was no question, whether it's paintings for $500,000 apiece, how does something like this happen? And that's not nearly as bad as other things, but that's going to be up to different people. You'd have to speak to them. It's terrible, terrible situation.
Let me ask you, it's interesting. You had COVID almost a year ago. And if you go from Labor Day of 2020 to Labor Day this year, it was a 300% increase in cases of COVID.
Yeah.
Didn't get much reporting. Now this information is out today, where more Americans have died this year of COVID-19 than died in all of 2020. He only mentioned monoclonal antibodies, which you received an infusion of very early, one of the first to receive it, Regeneron. He only mentioned it for the first time 2.5 weeks ago. Now, my question to you is, how is it that is so underreported? And I know that there are people that believe in liberty and freedom, et cetera, but you did hand them off 3 vaccines and monoclonal antibodies as a therapeutic. How is it possible more people died this year when he was hammering you all last year about it?
Well, I was saying the other day, it was very interesting. During my administration, everybody wanted the vaccine. There was nobody saying, oh, gee, I don't want to take it. Now they say that, and that's because they don't trust the Biden administration. I can think of no other reason. But they say, we don't want it. We aren't going to take it. When I was there, everybody wanted it, and we were doing great. The military did a fantastic job. Outside of the television generals, we have great generals. We have great leadership in the military. They're great people, great men and women. We have unbelievable leadership. We defeated 100% of the ISIS caliphate in Iraq and Iran, all over. But in Iraq, we knocked out and by the way, we did Iran indirectly a very big favor because they're not big fans of ISIS either. But Syria, we knocked out 100%, and we knocked out the leadership, and we knocked them out very strongly. We had great leaders, great generals, and they did a fantastic job of the distribution of the vaccine. But there were no people, very few people, I heard of no people that didn't want to take it. And with all of the things you've seen, and in fact, one of the things I'm very proud of, whether it's Regeneron or Eli Lilly or, some of the things that we came up with, is therapeutics. The therapeutics are incredible that we came up with in addition to the vaccines. And you say, how is it possible that your numbers are bigger now? But I don't read that the numbers are bigger now. You hardly hear it. If that were me, it would be brutal because we did an incredible job on the pandemic, an incredible job. The ventilators, we became the world's supplier of ventilators. The masks, the gowns, we make it all now. The cupboards were bare. When I took over as president, our cupboards were bare. We didn't have anything. And that included the states. We helped the states. And if the governors are honest, they'll tell you what a great job the federal government did in terms of helping them get the equipment and the material they needed to fight this. But you're right. It's worse now. There are more cases now, but you don't hear the news at all. You don't see death counts on CNN. You don't see any of that. It's an incredible job that we did. We have been given no credit. But you know what? The people know. And we got 75 million votes. That's more votes than any sitting president in history. And 12 million more than we did in 2016. That's a record. Nobody came close to that. Usually a president gets less in the second term.
Well, Obama got less.
People know what a good job we did. People know what a good job we did, Sean.
Well, Biden is actually out there saying he started the vaccination program, even though you had rolled it out. Let me go back to the economy. There's estimates out now that because of Biden inflation, which is now at a 30-year high, according to some indicators, and we now have the average American household is paying $175 more a month. That's $2,100 a Biden inflation tax, if you will, on every single American household. You see gas prices now up dramatically, 50% from when you were president, not that long ago. Food prices are up. Raw materials are up. Inflation is through the roof. If they pass this new Green Deal socialism, where do you see the economy headed? Because I don't see good things happening. We've tried this before. It's called socialism, and it always fails. The promises are unfulfilled. More poverty exists in the end, and you give up a lot of freedom in the name of false security.
So the $1.2 trillion is about 9%. Think of that. 9%. They talk about infrastructure. This is 9% infrastructure. Should be 100% infrastructure. So that is a total shame. And then the 3.5, which a lot of people are saying is 5 trillion. These are numbers that have never been discussed before with any president. Nobody would do it because it's crippling to the economy. Most of it is money you could throw right out the window. It's going to be devastating. And then inflation has kicked in. And remember this, with energy going up like that, you know, if you have a product and you need trucks or you need whatever it is to deliver it, you need energy. So with energy being double and triple what it was just a few months ago when we were there, $1.87 a gallon, and now it's over $5 a gallon. That's a lot more than 50%. When energy goes up like that, Sean, everything is affected. In terms of inflation, it has a huge inflationary impact on this country. And I was here with Jimmy Carter when Jimmy Carter went out and did what he was doing, and a lot of it was similar but on a much smaller scale. We had inflation, and it was almost ruining for our country. It almost ruined our country. But this is much more severe. And what they're doing is changing the social fabric of our country. It's not even believable. Bernie Sanders can't believe it. Bernie Sanders goes around telling people, I can't believe what's happening here. AOC and a very tiny group of people are pushing an agenda that will destroy, literally, it'll ruin our country. Between the borders, you look at a withdrawal from Afghanistan, you take a look at that, where we have wonderful warriors killed so needlessly and leave the Americans behind, and we leave $85 billion worth of equipment behind. The military comes out first, and we leave the Afghanistan. We could have gone out with dignity, with pride, and with strength. And instead, we look like, to the whole world, we look like we don't know what we're doing. We look like we surrendered to people with knives.
Should we get rid of these vaccine mandates, sir?
Well, you know, we never heard the term mandate, but people have to have their freedoms, and we should be in a great shape. Between the people that get it, they should not have to. If you get COVID or whatever you want to call it, plenty of names, Wuhan virus, the China virus, you could call it we got plenty of names. But when you get it, you shouldn't have to be forced. They want to force people who have had it to have the vaccine. When in actuality, when you have it, you don't need the vaccine. You become immune, so they say, and it's rare
natural
that you
immunity.
Get it twice. It is a natural immunity. Why are they forcing people to take the vaccine? Remember this, the drug companies make a lot of money, and they like it. I don't know who else wants it or likes it, but when you get it, you don't have to take the vaccine.
It's sad that we're even firing frontline nurses and healthcare workers that were diving on COVID grenades every day in the worst moments of this. Let me ask you about the IRS spying on Americans on $600 transactions, which is ridiculous. And I want to ask you that in light of Merrick Garland now and his new effort to empower the FBI to literally look at moms and dads at school board meetings, looking into possible domestic terrorism. I would think local police could be called in if there's a problem. But then we find out that Merrick Garland, the Attorney General's son-in-law, is a partner of this firm, Panorama, that's making millions of dollars in contracts with school districts pushing critical race theory, which is part of the reason many parents are complaining, or COVID restrictions. What is your reaction to that?
Well, you're just telling me the last part. I didn't know that. But, look, he's a respected man. I hope he's going to do what's right. This country is at a breaking point. This country is not going to stand for it any longer. But he's somebody that has always been highly respected. He happens to be on the liberal side of things. And hopefully he'll do what's right. But, Sean, the country can't take much more of it. They can't do it. When you look at those school boards, those are parents that love their country and they love their children, and they don't want all of this nonsense that's been being fed to their children. They just don't want it. And, they're trying to make them out to be terrorists. It's actually, they use the term today. I saw it today that they're terrorists. The Taliban, they're terrorists. We gave them a lot. They're trying to approve $10 billion a year to go to Afghanistan, $10 billion a year to the Taliban. On top of everything else, on top of the $85 billion worth of equipment, it's going to be in our budget, and we don't have other countries contributing, to pay $10 billion a year to the Taliban, which is Afghanistan. I mean, how crazy is this?
Let me ask you this. I've gotten asked this question about you a lot. People know that I've known you for many years. We've been friends for a long time. I knew you long before you ran, over 25 years. And they say, I agree with the president's policies, and I want him to run again in 2024, but maybe if he could just fight a little less. Now, I don't know what that means. I guess if they want you to fight for issues like the border and lower taxes and energy independence and free and fair trade deals and fight our enemies, and I don't know if they expect to have a switch that would go off and say, okay, I'm going to be Mr. Nice to the media that's asking me hostile questions. But I do get asked the question a lot. Is there anything that stylistically, when people complain about style, that you would say to them?
Well, remember this. When I got elected, I thought I would be running the country. And I thought that would be my primary function, run the country, defend the country, all of the typical things. But I had another thing I had to do, and that was survival. They created a fake Russia hoax. They had fake impeachments, 2 fake impeachments, where the Republicans were great. I have to say they stuck with us, and they were great. But they were fake charges. Perfect phone call. Nobody ever could even imagine it was a perfect phone call. The whole thing was fake, and I had to survive. And to survive, you had to be tough, and you had to be out there. You didn't have time to be necessarily dainty and nice. And we did a great job. We created the greatest economy in the history of the world.
We, on this program, debunked the Russia hoax myth, and we got it right. It took us 3 years to get to the bottom of all of it. Mr. President, you've been very generous with your time. These are troubled times for the American people. I know that the forgotten man and woman was a big theme in 2016, and I'm sure if you do run in 2024, it'll be a big theme of yours again. We appreciate your time.
That's right. Thank you very much, John. Thank you.